Unfortunately, I keep getting richer. Episode 1. The Cleaner at the Grand Jianhua. At 5 in the morning, Bai Lianhua owned 19 yuan, 2 steamed buns and half a packet of painkillers. The 19 yuan had to last until Friday. The buns were breakfast and lunch. The painkillers were for the ache in her right wrist, which had begun 3 days earlier and grown steadily worse each time she wrung out a cloth. She sat on the edge of a narrow bed in a room shared with 3 other women and counted the coins in her palm for the second time. The total remained 19. Stubborn things, she muttered. Across the room, Chunmei pulled a blanket over her head. If you argue with your money any louder, it might leave. It already spends most of its time away from me. Then let it sleep. Lianhua closed her fingers around the coins and pushed them into the inside pocket of her coat. The lining had torn near the hem, so she had sewn a smaller pocket into it with thread borrowed from the garment factory. There were better ways to hide money, but none that came free. She ate 1 bun, drank a cup of boiled water, and wrapped the other bun in yesterday's newspaper. The room had no heating. Her breath showed faintly when she bent to lace her shoes. Chunmei surfaced from beneath the blanket and squinted at her. Where are they sending you today? Grand Jianhua Hotel. That woke her properly. The Grand Jianhua. There can't be 2 places foolish enough to put grand in their name. That hotel has foreign guests, famous people too. They use toilets like everyone else. You're cleaning toilets. Among other glamorous duties. Chunmei pushed herself upright. She worked nights at a textile mill and still wore yesterday's gray uniform. A bruise darkened one side of her jaw where a machine guard had swung loose. The supervisor had blamed her for standing too close. The agency said banquet work. They say many things. Most of them improve when nobody checks. How much? 28 yuan for 10 hours. Chunmei gave a low whistle. That's almost generous. They'll recover from the mistake by deducting 6 yuan for the uniform. Of course. Lianhua pulled on her coat. It had belonged to a woman at the orphanage who left one winter and never returned. The sleeves were too short, and one button had been replaced with a brown disc cut from a piece of wood. After 9 years of use, it remained the warmest thing Lianhua owned. She stopped at the door. Eat the rice in the tin if I'm late. That's yours. I won't be here to defend it. Chunmei smiled. Try not to insult anyone important. Important people should try not to deserve it. Lianhua left before Chunmei could answer. The first bus was crowded with factory workers, cleaners, cooks, and men carrying toolboxes polished smooth at the handles. Lianhua stood near the rear door, one hand around an overhead rail and the other protecting the bun inside her coat. The city changed as the bus traveled east. Low apartment blocks gave way to glass towers. Bicycles thinned, cars grew darker and longer, and shop windows began displaying things without prices. By the time Lianhua stepped onto the pavement opposite the Grand Jianhua, she had entered a version of the city built for people who never counted coins before breakfast. The hotel rose above a wide stone forecourt, its windows catching the pale morning light. 2 bronze lions guarded the entrance. Uniformed doormen stood beneath a red-and gold canopy while polished cars glided past them one at a time. Lianhua had worked there twice before. She knew the public entrance, the staff entrance, and the kitchen door that jammed in wet weather. She also knew that one night in the least expensive room cost more than she earned in 4 months. She walked around the side of the building and descended a concrete stairwell. The temporary workers waited in a corridor beside the laundry. There were 14 of them. A woman from the agency sat behind a folding table with a list of names and a box of pale green uniforms. Bai Lianhua. Lianhua stepped forward. The woman looked at her coat, then at her shoes. You were told to arrive presentable. I'm wearing all the clothes I own. Which one offended you? Several workers looked down to hide their smiles. The woman's mouth tightened. 6 yuan uniform deposit. The message said 6 yuan cleaning fee. Deposit. You get it back if the uniform is returned undamaged. Will you write that down? Everyone knows the rules. Then writing them should be easy. The woman stared at her for a moment, reached for the next uniform and called another name. Lianhua remained where she was. Do you want to work today? The woman asked. Very much. That's why I'd like to be paid. The corridor grew quiet. At last, the woman took a receipt book from beneath the table, wrote 6 yuan and tore off the page. She pushed it towards Lianhua without meeting her eyes. Happy? Ask me on Friday. The uniform was one size too large. Lianhua rolled the sleeves and tied the apron tightly enough to stop the trousers slipping. At 6:30, the hotel's housekeeping supervisor marched the temporary staff upstairs. Her name was Manager Q. She wore a navy suit, pearl earrings, and the expression of someone forced to supervise farm animals in a palace. There is a private corporate meeting today, she said. Senior executives from Gu Corp will be using the Eastern Conference rooms and dining hall. You will remain out of sight. You will not speak to guests unless spoken to. If anyone important sees you standing around, you will be dismissed immediately. Lianhua raised a hand. Manager Q looked annoyed before the question had been asked. What? How do we know which guests are important? You will know. Do they glow? A man beside Lianhua coughed into his fist. Manager Q's eyes narrowed. Anyone staying in this hotel is more important than you. That makes it easier. Bai Lianhua, isn't it? Yes. You will clean the ground floor washrooms. There's the glamour I was promised. Manager Q sent everyone to their stations. The Grand Jianhua's main washroom was larger than Lianhua's entire shared room. It had marble counters, brass taps, fresh flowers, folded hand towels, and small bottles of perfume set beside the mirrors. Music played quietly through speakers hidden in the ceiling. Lianhua had slept in places with worse plumbing than each individual stall. She filled her bucket, inspected the supplies, and began at the far end. The work was simple. The guests created less mess than factory workers, and the hotel provided gloves thick enough to last a full shift. She could have finished in an hour if Manager Q had not demanded that every brass fitting be polished until it reflected a face. By 9, Lianhua's wrist had begun to throb. She worked left-handed for a while and watched shoes pass beneath the stall doors. Expensive leather, narrow heels, polished boots. People entered discussing contracts, property, and somebody's son who had returned from studying overseas. They lowered their voices only when the gossip became interesting. Near 10, 2 women stopped by the mirrors. Zhou Mingde has arrived, one whispered. Today, I thought the memorial board meeting was private. It is. My husband says the entire group is unsettled. Gu Jianhong has been dead for 6 weeks, and Zhou still won't name a successor. There is no successor. There must be someone, a fortune that large cannot simply sit there. Perhaps Zhou intends to keep it. The first woman laughed softly. He served Chairman Gu for 30 years. If he wanted the company, he could have taken it while the old man was ill. Lianhua wiped the same brass tap twice while listening. Everyone in China knew the name Gu Jianhong. His companies built apartment towers, operated ports, manufactured household appliances, and owned hotels like the one beneath her feet. People argued over the size of his fortune because no one could count it properly. The newspapers had carried his face for a week after his death. He had looked stern even in the gentlest photograph. One of the women leaned closer to the mirror. I heard the will cannot be executed. Why? The principal heir is missing. A secret son. A daughter. The washroom door opened. Manager Q entered and saw Lianhua standing near the counter. Why aren't you working? The tap was moving too quickly. I waited for it to tire. The 2 guests glanced at each other. Manager Q flushed. Get inside the last stall and clean it again. It's occupied. Then find something else. Lianhua looked around the spotless room. Would you like me to polish the flowers? Outside, now. Lianhua took her bucket and left. Manager Q followed her into the corridor. You were told to remain invisible. I was cleaning. You were listening to guests. They were speaking beside me. Temporary workers do not need opinions. Then you should ask the agency to send buckets. Manager Q stepped closer. One more word and I will send you home without pay. Lianhua held her gaze. She had dealt with supervisors who shouted, landlords who threatened, and men who mistook poverty for permission. Manager Q's suit and pearl earrings did not make her unusual. If you dismiss me after 4 hours, you owe me for 4 hours. You'll receive whatever the agency decides. Then they can decide after I visit the labor office. Manager Q's expression changed slightly. It happened whenever someone realized the poor person in front of them knew how paperwork worked. Go clean the staff washroom on the 3rd floor, she said. Certainly. Lianhua turned towards the service lift. And Bai Lianhua. She looked back. Stay away from the eastern lobby. Is that where the glowing people are? Manager Q pointed at the lift. Lianhua went. Zhou Mingde had known Gu Jianhong for 32 years. During that time, he had seen his friend build factories from abandoned workshops, negotiate with ministers, survive 3 attempts to remove him from his own company, and purchase a shipping line during a dinner that had originally been arranged to discuss wallpaper. Very little unsettled Zhou Mingde. The thin folder on the seat beside him had managed it. His car entered the Grand Jianhua's forecourt at 10 minutes past 10. Hotel directors, department heads, and security officers were already waiting beneath the canopy. General Manager Han hurried forward as the rear door opened. President Zhou, welcome. We weren't informed that you would arrive personally. I decided this morning. The Eastern Conference Room has been prepared. The board members. They can wait. General Manager Han faltered. Members of Gu Corp's board had not been told to wait for anyone since Gu Jianhong entered hospital. Zhou stepped out, buttoned his dark coat, and picked up the folder. I'm looking for a temporary worker. Of course, which department? Her name is Bai Lianhua. The hotel director looked towards the personnel manager, who looked towards the housekeeping director, who immediately looked as though she regretted coming to work. We'll find her at once, General Manager Han said. Zhou walked through the main doors. The lobby's marble floor shone beneath a chandelier imported from Italy. Guests paused as the procession of hotel managers followed him past the reception desk. He stopped beside the central fountain. I'll wait here. General Manager Han swallowed. President Zhou, perhaps the private lounge would be more comfortable. Here is fine. The managers scattered. Within 3 minutes, every supervisor in the hotel knew that Zhou Mingde had arrived without warning and demanded to see a temporary worker named Bai Lianhua. The story changed as it traveled. By the time it reached the kitchens, Bai Lianhua had become an undercover government inspector. In the laundry, she was Zhou's illegitimate daughter. The security office decided she had stolen something priceless. Manager Q heard her name over the housekeeping radio and went pale. She found Lianhua on the 3rd floor, kneeling beside a blocked drain with one hand inside a rubber glove and the other holding a bent piece of wire. Get up. Give me a minute. Get up now. Lianhua glanced over her shoulder. If I leave this, the floor will flood. Manager Q seized the wire, failed to hold it properly, and dropped it into the drain. They both stared at the empty space where it had been. That was the only useful piece, Lianhua said. The general manager wants you in the lobby. Why? How would I know? Lianhua stood and peeled off her gloves. Am I being dismissed? Just move. The lift ride to the ground floor took less than a minute. Manager Q spent most of it examining Lianhua as though searching for an explanation hidden beneath the oversized uniform. Do you know President Zhou? Should I? Zhou Mingde. No. Think carefully. I don't know him. Slowly either. The lift doors opened. The hotel lobby had fallen strangely quiet. Guests stood near the reception desk pretending to study brochures. Staff formed a nervous line beside the fountain. At the center of it all waited a tall man with silver at his temples and a folder beneath one arm. He turned when Lianhua approached. For several seconds, Zhou Mingde said nothing. He had seen the photograph in the folder. He had studied the shape of her eyes, the angle of her jaw, and the small crease between her brows. The resemblance had seemed persuasive on paper. In person, it struck him with enough force to empty his mind. At 25, Bai Lianhua looked like the woman in a photograph Gu Jianhong had kept locked in his desk for decades. Her hair had been twisted into a rough knot. Her uniform sleeves were rolled to the elbows, and damp marks darkened the knees of her trousers. A red line crossed one cheek where her mask had pressed into the skin. Zhou's grip tightened on the folder. They had searched university records, provincial archives, adoption lists, and migration registers. Gu Jianhong had paid investigators across the country and beyond it. His daughter had spent the previous 3 months cleaning rooms inside a Gu Corp hotel. Bai Lianhua, Zhou asked. Yes. My name is Zhou Mingde. So everyone keeps telling me. General manager had made a small choking sound. Zhou studied her face. I need to speak with you privately. Lianhua glanced at the managers arranged behind him. Am I in trouble? No. Does someone think I stole something? No. Then can it wait until my break? No one in the lobby moved. Zhou looked at the clock above reception. When is your break? 12:30. It cannot wait that long. Lianhua sighed. If I leave my station, the agency may deduct the day. Manager Q stepped forward. That will not be necessary, President Zhou. We will make sure she is paid. Lianhua turned. You said the agency decided what I receive. Manager Q's face became rigid. Zhou shifted his attention to her. Was there a question about Miss Bai's wages? A misunderstanding. There usually is when someone earning 28 yuan asks to keep it, Lianhua said. Zhou nodded once. Pay her for the full shift, return any uniform charge. The woman from the agency had arrived at the edge of the lobby and now looked as if she wanted the marble floor to open beneath her. In cash, Lianhua added. They make us wait until Friday. In cash, Zhou agreed. All right, she untied her apron. Where are we going? General manager Han led them to a private lounge behind reception. Lianhua paused at the entrance to remove her work shoes. That isn't necessary, he said. They're wet. A member of staff hurried over with slippers. Lianhua put them on and walked into a room furnished with cream-colored sofas, silk screens, and a table set with tea. She chose the chair nearest the door. Zhou sat opposite her. General Manager Han remained standing until Zhou looked at him. We need privacy. The manager left immediately. Lianhua watched the door close. This is either very good or very bad. I'm afraid it is both. That sounds expensive. Zhou placed the folder on the table. Have you heard of Gu Jianhong? Everyone has. How much do you know about him? He owned half the country, newspapers printed his face, and he died last month. 6 weeks ago. I'm sorry. Zhou's expression softened by a degree. Thank you. He opened the folder and turned the first page towards her. It held 2 photographs. One showed Gu Jianhong in his 40s, standing outside a factory gate. The other showed a young woman seated beneath a tree with a book open on her lap. Lianhua looked at the woman, longer than she intended. Who is she? Professor Lin Meiying. The name meant nothing to her. She was an academic in Beijing. Her work was respected throughout the country before the Cultural Revolution. Why are you telling me this? Zhou rested his hands on the folder. Because we believe she was your mother. Lianhua stared at him. The hidden speakers in the lounge played the same quiet instrumental music as the washroom. Somewhere beyond the door, A trolley rattled across tile. "Are you selling something?" she asked. "No. People tell lonely women interesting stories before asking for money." "I will not ask you for money." "Then you chose the wrong lonely woman." Zhou slid a document across the table. It was an investigator's report, stamped and signed. Beneath it lay a copy of an orphanage intake record bearing Lianhua's childhood photograph. She did not touch either page. "Professor Lin gave birth to a daughter in 1976, Zhou said. "The child disappeared during the final months of the upheaval. For many years, everyone close to the family believed the baby had died." Convenient. It was a chaotic time. It was chaotic for millions of people. Most of them didn't send you to a hotel to find me. Zhou accepted the rebuke. Gu Jianhong was Professor Lin's husband. Lianhua's gaze returned to the photograph of the stern man by the factory gate. "You believe he was my father?" "Yes." "Why?" Zhou explained the surviving records, the orphanage ledger, and the testimony of an elderly woman found in Hubei. He spoke with care, keeping to facts he could prove. The investigation had traced an infant through 3 provinces and 2 temporary shelters. Names had changed along the way. Dates differed by weeks. One record mentioned a scrap of embroidered cloth marked with the character for Lotus. "That is how the orphanage chose Lianhua," Zhou said. "They chose Bai because the space for family name couldn't be left empty." "I know." "Do you?" Her voice remained steady, which worried him more than anger would have. Zhou opened the folder to a sealed medical report. "A blood sample taken during your hospital treatment last winter remained in the provincial system. Gu Jianhong had authorized comparison with his own medical records in the event investigators found a candidate. The preliminary result indicates a direct parent-child relationship." Lianhua remembered the hospital. She had collapsed beside a factory line after working 2 shifts and awoken owing more money than she could pay. The agency had deducted the bill over 4 months. Preliminary. A second test is required for legal confirmation. A physician is prepared to take the sample today. "And if I say no?" "You return to your shift. No one will force you." "Would I still get paid?" "Yes." She looked at the photographs again. The woman beneath the tree had Lianhua's eyes. Once seen, the resemblance became difficult to ignore. It stirred nothing warm inside her. It felt like discovering that a stranger possessed something stolen from her face. "Why now?" she asked. "The investigator located the final orphanage record 12 days ago. Your famous billionaire had 25 years. Zhou drew a slow breath. He searched for a long time. "With all his money?" "Yes. And I was cleaning his toilets." The words landed between them. Zhou looked down at the folder. "This hotel belongs to Gu Corp." Lianhua gave a short laugh. It carried no amusement. "Of course it does." He allowed the silence to remain. "Does he have a family?" she asked eventually. "No other children have been identified." "A wife?" Professor Lin was his only wife. "So what happens if your test says I'm his daughter?" Zhou had prepared explanations about legal recognition, estate administration, and the transfer of voting rights. None seemed appropriate while she still wore a cleaner's uniform. "Gu Jianhong left a will," he said. "Did he leave me an apology?" "He left you everything." Lianhua blinked once. "Everything." His personal estate, properties, investments, and controlling interest in Gu Corp. She leaned back in the chair and studied him. "How much are you asking me to pay for the test?" "Nothing." The story became less believable. Zhou removed a card from his pocket and placed it beside the folder. His name, office, and Gu Corp seal were printed across it. "You may verify my identity with the hotel, the company headquarters, or any newspaper you choose. You may select your own hospital and lawyer. I came personally because your father asked me to find you." "He asked you before he died?" "Many times." "Did he know you were close?" Zhou hesitated. He knew there was a promising lead. That wasn't my question. No, he did not know we had identified you. Lianhua lowered her eyes. The anger arrived quietly. It settled beneath her ribs, heavy and hot. She had imagined her parents at different ages. As a child, she pictured farmers who could not afford to keep her. Later, she imagined a young, unmarried woman who had left her outside the orphanage and run away in shame. On colder nights, she decided they were dead. That version had been easiest because dead people could not return for anyone. Now a stranger sat opposite her and said her father had been alive for almost her entire life. He had owned towers, factories, and hotels. His name opened doors across the country. While she slept in railway stations, he had possessed houses he never entered. He had died 6 weeks before anyone thought to bring her inside. "I'll take the test," she said. Zhou nodded. "Then I want to finish my shift." "That is unnecessary. You said I could return." "You can." "Good." She stood. Zhou rose with her. "Miss Bai, there is no reason for you to continue cleaning." "There was a reason when I came in this morning. Your circumstances may have changed." "Your test hasn't." She folded the hotel slippers neatly beside the chair and put on her damp shoes. At the door, she looked back. "If this turns out to be a trick, I'll be very difficult to find next time." "I understand." "No, you don't." She opened the door and walked out. By lunchtime, everyone at the Grand Jianhua had heard that Bai Lianhua was connected to Zhou Mingde. Nobody knew how. Manager Q met her outside the lounge with an expression carefully emptied of hostility. "Miss Bai, you don't need to return to the washroom." "I haven't finished." "Someone else will handle it." "Will they be paid extra?" "That is an internal matter." "Then I'll finish." The agency woman appeared with an envelope containing 28 yuan and the 6 yuan uniform deposit. Lianhua counted it in front of her. "You haven't returned the uniform yet," the woman said. "You can follow me around until I do." Lianhua put the money inside her coat and went back to the third-floor drain. The wire had disappeared inside it, so she found a maintenance worker and borrowed a hooked rod. The blockage came free with one hard pull. At 12:30, she sat on an upturned crate in the service corridor and ate her second steamed bun. A young room attendant named Xiaoli hovered nearby. "Is President Zhou your relative?" Xiaoli asked. "He says he worked for my father." Xiaoli's eyes widened. "I haven't decided whether to believe him." "Your father works for Gu Corp." "He's dead." Xiaoli's excitement vanished. "I'm sorry." "So is President Zhou." "President Zhou is dead." "Sorry, he's sorry." For the first time that day, Lianhua laughed properly. Xiaoli joined her after a startled moment. Manager Q watched them from the far end of the corridor. Lianhua finished the shift at 4. She changed into her old clothes, returned the uniform, and demanded a second signature confirming that it had no damage. The agency woman signed without argument. Zhou waited beside the staff entrance. His black car drew the attention of everyone leaving through the concrete stairwell. Lianhua stopped several steps away. "You stayed." "I said the physician was waiting." "People like you usually send someone." "This is personal." She looked at the car. "Will it cost me anything to sit in that?" "No." "Then I suppose I can afford it." The rear seat was softer than her bed. Lianhua placed both feet firmly on the floor and kept her hands in her lap. The city passed beyond tinted windows while Zhou spoke on a small mobile telephone. She had seen portable phones before. Businessmen carried them into hotel restaurants and placed them on tables where everyone could admire them. Zhou used his to rearrange a hospital appointment and postpone the entire board of Gu Corp without raising his voice. When he finished, Lianhua asked, "How many people are waiting for you?" 23. "And you kept them waiting all day?" "Yes." "Are they important?" "They believe so." She smiled despite herself. The hospital drew blood from both arms because the first vein collapsed. Lianhua watched the tubes fill while Zhou turned towards the window. She noticed. You can look. I dislike needles. You run the largest company in China. Needles remain unimpressed. The answer improved her opinion of him. The physician promised results by the following morning. Zhou offered to arrange a hotel room for Lianhua, which she refused. I have somewhere to sleep. Is it safe? Usually. I can have a car take you home. A car like this outside, my building would double the rent by morning. He considered that and admitted she was probably right. She gave him the address of a noodle shop instead. He instructed the driver to stop there. Before she left, Zhou handed her a sealed envelope. What is this? Money for your time today. She pushed it back. I was paid. You missed no hours. I finished the shift. Then consider it in advance for tomorrow. If I'm not his daughter, I won't have a tomorrow with you. Zhou held the envelope for a moment, then returned it to his coat. 9 o'clock, he said, Gu Corp headquarters. If the test is positive. If the test is positive. Lianhua climbed out of the car. Miss Bai. She leaned down to look through the open door. Your father recorded something for you. Her fingers tightened around the doorframe. Did he know my name? No. Then he recorded it for the daughter he hoped I might be. She closed the door gently and walked away. Lianhua told Chunmei everything over one bowl of noodles shared between them. They sat beneath a flickering light in the corner of the small shop. Steam clouded the windows. Lianhua used her chopsticks to divide the noodles evenly, then moved 3 pieces of beef into Chunmei's half. Chunmei listened without interrupting until the story reached the inheritance. Everything, she asked. That's what he said. Gu Jianhong's everything. Apparently he had no smaller everything. Chunmei put down her chopsticks. Lianhua, he was the richest man in China. Was he? You know he was. The newspapers argue about it. They argue about whether he was the richest man in Asia. That sounds tiring. Chunmei stared at her. You could be rich. Tomorrow, I could be the woman who fell for a very elaborate joke. Zhou Mingde doesn't play jokes on cleaners. Perhaps he has become bored. Neither of them spoke for a while. Outside, a cyclist passed with sacks of vegetables tied across the rear rack. The shop owner scraped a walk in the kitchen. Do you want it to be true? Chunmei asked. Lianhua looked down at her noodles. I wanted parents when I was 6. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I have. They returned to the room after dark. One of the other tenants had lit a small brazier despite the landlord's rules, and the air smelled of coal. Lianhua lay awake listening to Chunmei breathe. At midnight, she got up and took her coat from the nail beside the door. She found an old newspaper tucked beneath the lining, smoothed it over the table, and studied Gu Jianhong's printed face. The article praised his vision. It described the company he built, the workers he employed, and the hospitals he funded. There was a photograph of the Grand Jianhua opening 10 years earlier. Gu Jianhong stood at the center, holding a pair of ceremonial scissors. Lianhua had cleaned beneath that photograph all morning. She folded the newspaper and returned it to the lining. She did not sleep. At 8 the next morning, a black car waited across the road. The driver remained inside until Lianhua approached. He stepped out and opened the rear door. President Zhou asked me to bring you to headquarters. Did the result come? Yes, Miss Bai. And? The driver hesitated. President Zhou asked to tell you himself. Then President Zhou enjoys making things difficult. She got into the car. Gu Corp headquarters occupied a tower of dark glass near the financial district. Its name appeared in steel characters above the entrance. Employees crossed the lobby in streams, each carrying folders, briefcases, or the hurried expression of someone whose superior had arrived first. Lianhua wore her old coat and the cleanest trousers she owned. The wooden button at her chest drew several glances. The receptionist rose when she approached. "Miss Bai, President Zhou is expecting you." Lianhua looked at the security gates. "Do I need a pass?" "No. Everyone else has one." "You don't. That seems poorly organized." A senior assistant arrived to escort her upstairs. The lift climbed so quickly that Lianhua's ears popped. When the doors opened, Zhou Mingde stood waiting in a quiet reception area. He held no folder this time. One look at his face gave her the answer. "The test confirmed it," she said. "Yes." "How certain?" "More than 99.9%. That remaining fraction must be very confident." Zhou almost smiled. "Bai Lianhua, you are Gu Jianhong's biological daughter and sole legal heir." The words felt rehearsed. Perhaps he had been preparing them for 25 years. Lianhua nodded once. "What happens now?" "That depends on you." He led her into a boardroom overlooking the city. 23 people rose from their chairs. Lianhua stopped in the doorway. "Are these the important people from yesterday?" "Some of them." Several board members heard her. None appeared pleased. Zhou introduced the estate lawyer, the chief financial officer, and the members of the Gu Corp board. Their names arrived too quickly to keep. Lianhua remembered faces instead. The man who studied her coat, the woman who watched her eyes, the elderly director who looked close to tears, and the younger executive who kept glancing at Zhou for instructions. At the far end of the table stood an empty chair. It had belonged to Gu Jianhong. Zhou offered it to her. "I'll sit here," Lianhua said, taking the first ordinary chair near the door. Everyone else sat slowly. The estate lawyer opened the meeting by explaining the DNA result and legal process. Lianhua listened until the sentences filled with words designed to make simple matters expensive. She raised a hand. The lawyer stopped. "Do I inherit everything?" "Subject to formal probate and several regulatory approvals, you are the sole beneficiary of Chairman Gu's personal estate and the designated recipient of his controlling shares." "Is that yes?" "Yes." "Does anyone here believe I'm stealing it?" Silence moved around the table. An older board member cleared his throat. "No one disputes the will, Miss Gu." "Bai." "Pardon." "My name is Bai Lianhua." "Of course, I meant no disrespect." "You meant to give me his name." The lawyer leaned forward. "You are entitled to register as Gu Lianhua now that your parentage has been established." "I don't want to." "It may simplify certain matters." "For whom?" The lawyer looked towards Zhou. Lianhua rested her forearms on the table. "Bai Lianhua survived 25 years. She worked yesterday. I'm not getting rid of her because a dead man left paperwork." No one tried the name again. Zhou asked the chief financial officer to continue. Numbers appeared on a projection screen. Gu Jianhong's estate included cash deposits, domestic securities, overseas investments, property, art, aircraft, vehicles, and controlling interests in dozens of companies. The figures were arranged in columns long enough to become meaningless. Lianhua stared at the screen. "How much?" The chief financial officer adjusted his glasses. "The precise valuation changes with the markets." "How much did it change while you said that?" Someone at the table shifted. "Miss Bai," Zhou said, "the current estimate of your total inherited wealth is slightly above 10 trillion yuan." She waited for the number to make sense. It did not. "Say it again." 10 trillion yuan. "How many zeros?" The chief financial officer answered. Lianhua counted them on her fingers beneath the table. Halfway through, she gave up. "That can't belong to one person." "Much of it represents ownership of companies and property," Zhou explained. "But it belonged to him." "Yes." "Now it belongs to me." "Yes." She looked around the room. Several board members had spent the morning worrying that the unknown daughter might be uneducated, unstable, or easy to control. None had considered how it would feel to explain 10 trillion yuan to someone who had counted 19 before sunrise. "What do you expect me to do with it?" she asked. The estate lawyer began. "There are several responsibilities." "I asked what you expect." Zhou answered. "Your father hoped you would live freely." Anger returned with such speed that her hands went cold. Freely. Those were his instructions. He was good at giving instructions after he died. The elderly director lowered his eyes. Zhou remained still. "He left a recording. You may hear his own words." "Later. Whenever you are ready." "I may never be ready." "Then no one will force you." Lianhua stood and walked towards the window. The city stretched beneath her. Somewhere beyond the towers stood the room she shared with 3 women. Somewhere farther west, a factory supervisor was shouting at workers whose pay had been delayed again. The Grand Jianhua's washroom would already have another cleaner. Behind her waited enough money to purchase buildings she could not name. Her father had found a way to reach her after his funeral. She turned. "Can I refuse it?" The lawyer looked startled. "You may disclaim the inheritance." "All of it?" "In principle, yes." "Where would it go?" "The corporate shares would be handled according to their governing provisions. The remainder would pass through the secondary terms of the will, including charitable trusts and institutional beneficiaries. So other people would decide how to use it. The will already specifies. He would still be deciding." No one answered. Lianhua returned to her chair. She thought of the woman in the photograph, the man outside the factory gate, 25 winters, temporary beds and meals measured by the coin. The money offered comfort and safety, yet it also felt like an answer to a question nobody had allowed her to ask. Why had they failed to find her? She had no way to confront Gu Jianhong or make him explain himself. Refusing the inheritance would send it along paths he had selected before his death. There was one choice that belonged entirely to her. "I'll take it," she said. Relief moved through the room. "And I'll spend it." The relief stopped. Zhou folded his hands. "That is generally what money is for." "All of it." The chief financial officer's pen paused above his paper. "I don't want his companies," Lianhua continued. "I don't want his houses, his paintings, or whatever else is on that screen. He left me money because he couldn't leave me a father. Fine. I'll use it to live every part of life I missed, and when the last yuan is gone, we'll be finished." The younger executive made the mistake of laughing. Lianhua looked at him. "Did I say something funny?" His smile vanished. 10 trillion yuan is a considerable sum. "Then I'll have to work hard." Zhou's gaze remained on her. "Miss Bai, Gu Corp earns income every day." "Then tell it to stop." Several board members looked personally wounded. "That would affect millions of employees, suppliers, and customers," Zhou said. Lianhua thought of Chunmei's factory and manager Q's wage threat. "I won't put workers out of jobs." "I didn't believe you would." "Can I sell my shares?" "Over time. A sudden sale would cause severe disruption and destroy a great deal of value." "That sounds promising." The chief financial officer looked faint. Zhou's voice remained calm. "It would also damage pension funds, small investors, and companies that depend upon Gu Corp." "Then I won't do that either." She crossed her arms. "I'll spend what I can without hurting ordinary people." One director opened his mouth. Zhou silenced him with a glance. "We will respect your decision," he said. "You think I'll change my mind?" "I think 10 trillion yuan will take time." "I have the rest of my life." "Then we should begin by finding you somewhere to stay." Lianhua looked down at her wooden coat button. For years, whenever she cleaned hotel rooms, she had wondered what it felt like to sleep beneath a white duvet in a room where no one else snored, argued, or searched through her pockets, and whether a bath remained hot when no one was waiting outside the door. The Grand Jianhua she said. What about it? I want to stay there tonight. You own it. Then I should be able to get a room. The chief financial officer made a sound that could have been a cough. Zhou picked up the telephone. By 6 that evening, Bai Lianhua had acquired a bank account containing more money than the Grand Jianhua's general manager would earn in several lifetimes. She also had a temporary identity certificate, 2 payment cards, and a headache. Zhou offered to take her shopping. Lianhua refused when she realized he intended to close an entire department store for her convenience. Other people may want to shop. Security would be easier. I have survived shops without security. He sent an assistant with her instead. The assistant, Tang Zia, was a composed woman in her early 30s who carried 2 mobile telephones and walked as if every corridor had been built to match her stride. She guided Lianhua into a department store where sales staff recognized her immediately. Lianhua noticed. Did President Zhou call ahead? Tang Zia considered lying and decided against it. Yes. Tell him not to do that again. He was concerned that you might be inconvenienced. Waiting 5 minutes won't kill me. They began with clothes. Lianhua chose a pair of black trousers, 2 shirts, a warm coat, and shoes that did not let water through the soles. Tang Zia looked at the modest pile. Would you like to see the designer collection? Are these clothes badly made? No. Then why? You said you intended to spend the inheritance. Lianhua turned towards the upper floor. Where is it? The designer section contained silk dresses, embroidered jackets, and handbags displayed on individual stands. A saleswoman showed Lianhua a red evening dress and named a price greater than Chunmei's annual wages. Lianhua touched the fabric. Is it comfortable? The silk is imported. That wasn't the question. The saleswoman recovered quickly. Yes, Miss Bai. Lianhua tried it on. The dress fitted beautifully and made her feel as though she had borrowed someone else's reflection. She bought it along with a dark wool coat, leather boots, and a handbag Tang Zia suggested. At the till, she watched the total appear. Is that all? Tang Zia looked at the saleswoman, who looked at the payment card. For these items, yes. Lianhua added a blue dress because Chunmei would like the color. Then she saw a pair of pearl earrings similar to Manager Q's and decided she did not want them. The card worked without hesitation. She waited for a feeling of triumph. What came instead was relief that her feet were dry. Outside the department store, Tang Zia directed a porter towards the car. Lianhua took the bag, containing her old coat. We can dispose of that for you, Tang Zia said. Why? You have a new one. This one still works. Tang Zia looked at the wooden button and nodded. Of course. They returned to the Grand Jianhua shortly after 8. News of Bai Lianhua's identity had reached the hotel ahead of them. The entire senior management team waited beneath the canopy. Manager Q stood at the end of the line. Lianhua stepped out wearing her new coat and carrying the old one over her arm. General Manager hand bowed. Chairwoman Bai, welcome to the Grand Jianhua. She looked behind her. Who? Tang Zia leaned closer. You. Don't call me that. General Manager hand straightened. Miss Bai, we are honored by your presence. I was here yesterday. Tonight you are our guest. I was in your bathroom yesterday. No one found a safe response. Lianhua walked into the lobby. The same fountain ran beneath the same chandelier. Hotel guests watched from the lounge, whispering behind raised cups. At reception, a young clerk stood ready. I need a room, Lianhua said. The clerk looked towards General Manager Han. We have prepared the chairman's private residence on the top floor, he said. Is that a hotel room? It is maintained for the owner's use. How much per night? There is no charge. Then I don't want it. General Manager Han's smile weakened. Perhaps the presidential suite would be more suitable. Is it available? He glanced at the clerk. The hotel was hosting 2 international delegations, a trade conference, and a wedding. Every standard suite had been occupied for weeks. One cancellation had left the presidential suite empty for 3 nights. Yes, the clerk said. How much? 88,888 yuan per night. A guest standing nearby lowered his newspaper. Tang Zia stepped forward. Miss Bai, you don't need to pay to stay in your own hotel. If I don't pay, I'm not spending anything. The payment returns to the hotel. Does all of it return? There are operating costs and taxes. Good, I'll take it for 3 nights. The clerk's hands hovered above the keyboard. 3 nights. Is it available for 3? Yes. Then 3. Lianhua handed over the card. The clerk processed the payment while everyone watched. 266,664 yuan. Yesterday, Lianhua had argued over a 6 yuan uniform deposit at the same desk. Tonight, she signed the receipt without examining the total twice. The suite was available and she could afford it. There was nothing else to decide. The man with the newspaper studied her face. By breakfast, he would tell 3 business partners that Gu Jianhong's mysterious heir had taken the presidential suite in her own hotel and insisted on paying full price. By lunch, the amount would double. By evening, someone in Shanghai would claim she had rented the entire floor. Lianhua knew none of this. She was wondering whether the room had a bath. The presidential suite had 2 bedrooms, a sitting room, a dining room, a study, and 3 bathrooms. Lianhua walked through it slowly. Fresh flowers stood on every table. The windows overlooked a river of city lights. A piano occupied one corner, polished so brightly that she could see herself in its side. The bedroom contained the largest bed she had ever seen. She pressed one hand into the mattress. Is something wrong? Tang Zia asked. It's soft. The hotel can provide a firmer mattress. Why would anyone do that? Tang Zia smiled. Lianhua opened the bathroom door. White marble surrounded a sunken tub beneath a wide window. Towels waited on heated rails. Small glass bottles stood in a row beside the sink. She picked one up. Can I use these? Everything in the suite is for you. All of it? Yes. Lianhua set the bottle down with care. A butler arrived to explain the room controls, private dining service, and 24-hour concierge. She listened until he reached the pillow menu. There are different kinds of pillow. 9, Miss Bai. Bring one of each. The butler bowed. Certainly. Tang Zia waited until he left. Do you need anything else tonight? Lianhua looked towards the dining room. Food. The kitchen will prepare whatever you want. Whatever I want. Within reason. How expensive is reason? Tang Zia handed her the private dining menu. Lianhua read every page. There were dishes she had seen carried through hotel corridors and others she could not picture from their names. Lobster, sea cucumber, imported beef, bird's nest soup, pastries filled with fruit she had never tasted. For years, she had eaten what she could obtain. Choosing food required an entirely different skill. I want to try these, she said, pointing to 6 dishes. For how many guests? 1. Tang Zia hesitated. That may be more than you can finish. Lianhua looked at the photographs again. Old hunger rose in her mind, warning against waste. Can the kitchen make small portions? Of course. Then small portions of everything on these 2 pages. Everything. I want to know what they taste like. Tang Zia wrote the order. And send a proper dinner to the night housekeeping staff, Lianhua added. The temporary workers too, if any are still here. What would you like sent? Ask what they want. People eat different things. Tang Zia wrote that down as well. Charge it to my room. Yes, Miss Bai. After she left, Lianhua locked the door. She checked it twice from habit, then stood with her back against it while the silence of the suite settled around her. There were no roommates, landlord or supervisor with a duplicate key. She walked into the bathroom and turned on the taps. Hot water poured into the tub. It remained hot. Lianhua sat on the marble edge and watched the water rise. Her new clothes waited in the bedroom. Her old coat lay folded over a chair. Inside its pocket were 53 yuan, a receipt for a cleaning uniform and yesterday's newspaper. She undressed, lowered herself into the bath and closed her eyes. For several minutes, nothing existed beyond heat. Then tears slipped down the sides of her face. She wiped them away, annoyed. "You're too late," she told the empty room. The room offered no answer. Dinner arrived on 3 trolleys. Lianhua put on the hotel robe and tasted everything. She disliked caviar, loved the beef, found the sea cucumber strange, and ate 2 spoonfuls of bird's nest soup before deciding it tasted mainly of the bowl. She wrote notes on the menu so she would remember. When she could eat no more, she asked the butler to package every untouched portion for the staff dining room. He assured her it would be handled. The 9 pillows arrived soon afterwards. Lianhua arranged them across the bed, tried each one, and chose the cheapest without knowing it. At 11, Zhou called the suite. "Are you comfortable?" he asked. "The room has 3 toilets." "I'm aware." "Why?" "Some guests entertain." "In the toilet." There was a pause on the line. "How was dinner?" "Expensive." "Did you enjoy it?" "Most of it." "Then it served its purpose." Lianhua looked towards the old coat. "How much did I spend today?" "The final figure has not been calculated." "Approximately." "Including clothing, accommodation, meals, and administrative expenses, a little over 400,000 yuan." She sat straighter. 400,000 yuan. More money than she had expected to earn across decades of temporary work. Gone in one afternoon. For the first time since the board meeting, the task ahead felt possible. "Good," she said. "There is one matter you should understand." "What?" "The estate's liquid holdings earned approximately 27 million yuan in interest and distributions today." Lianhua stared at the telephone. "Today?" "Yes. While I was shopping." "Money does not require supervision." "Can you make it require supervision?" "No." She lay back against the pillows. "Then I spent 400,000 and gained 27 million. Those figures exclude the daily movement in the value of Gu Corp." "Exclude it." "That would be misleading." "I'm comfortable being misled." Zhou cleared his throat. Gu Corp's market value increased today following confirmation that the succession issue had been resolved. Lianhua closed her eyes. "How much?" "The value of your holdings rose by roughly 312 million yuan." Silence filled the line. "Miss Bai." "I'm here." "I thought the call had disconnected." "I was deciding whether to throw the telephone out of the window." "The window does not open." "This hotel thinks of everything." Zhou waited. Lianhua sat up again and reached for the room service menu. The anger beneath her ribs had cooled into determination. "You said the presidential suite is available for 3 nights." "Yes." "What happens after that?" "A foreign delegation has reserved it." "Then I won't take it from them." "We can prepare the private residence." "Free?" "Yes." "Find me another expensive room." "In this hotel?" "Anywhere. I want to travel. I want to eat things I've never eaten, wear clothes I've never worn, and sleep in every bed I used to clean." Zhou was quiet for a moment. "Your father would have wanted that." Her grip tightened around the receiver. "Don't tell me what he wanted." "Understood." "Tomorrow, I'm going to spend more." "How much more?" "Enough to make today look sensible." She ended the call before he could answer. On the other side of the city, Zhou Mingde placed his telephone on the desk and looked at Gu Corp's preliminary financial report. The board had spent 6 weeks fearing a succession crisis. Creditors had begun asking questions. Competitors had prepared to divide vulnerable businesses. The appearance of Bai Lianhua had ended the uncertainty in a single morning. Orders had risen. Delayed contracts had been signed. 3 institutional investors had increased their positions before the market closed. At the Grand Jianhua, the staff dining room was serving its best meal in years. The night cleaners had already heard who paid for it. The temporary agency received 11 calls from workers asking for shifts at the hotel after word spread that the new owner had personally demanded full wages for a cleaner. Upstairs, Bai Lianhua stood beside the enormous window in a hotel robe, studying a city she could now afford to buy piece by piece. She had made her decision. Gu Jianhong had left her a fortune in place of all the years he had missed. She would turn it into meals, rooms, journeys, and every experience poverty had kept beyond reach. She would spend until none of his money remained. Her first day had cost her 400,000 yuan. By midnight, she was 338 million richer. Lianhua opened the room service menu. "Fine," she said. "Tomorrow we try harder."